So now we're gonna do the tubular cast on, the long tail tubular cast on. And we're gonna be starting with our main color yarn. So similar to a long tail cast on, you want to start with a long tail. So a good way to measure to make sure you have an accurate length tail is I like to wrap my yarn around my needle. I'll wrap it around about 5 times. So that's approximately 5 stitches with a little bit of a tail. So I'm going to fold that in half, and that's going to be about 10 stitches. Now I'm going to fold it in half again. If you're feeling a bit nervous that you might not have a long enough tail, a great thing to do if you have a cake like this, you can, or any kind of a yarn ball that you can pull from the center, you can do your long tail with one tail is from the outside and one tail is from the inside. So that's a great way to do it if you feel like you're going to run out of yarn, or if you want to make sure that you use exactly the amount. Okay, so similar to the long tail, I'm actually going to create a slip knot. I like to create it by making a pretzel. So I make a pretzel, I pull this through, and I've just created a slip knot. So I will put this on my needle and tighten it up. And then you want to make sure that the yarn that's attached to your ball or your working yarn is draped across your index finger, and your tail end is draped across your thumb. And grab the yarn tails with the rest of your hand like this. Very similar to the long tail cast on or the twisted German cast on. So now we're going to be creating some new stitches that will look like either knit stitches or purl stitches. Okay, and since this is the first stitch that we cast on, this is going to be a knit stitch. So I'm going to start with a purl stitch first, and to create what looks like a purl stitch when it's facing you, you want to go under the back loop, or the loop that's attached to your index finger, and over the loop attached to your thumb, and pull it out and kind of twist it around. So see, I've just created what will look like a purl bump right here. And now to create the knit stitch, I'll go under the thumb yarn first, reach around over the index yarn, and pull that towards me while twisting that yarn around. So now I've just created a knit stitch, and you'll just repeat those two. So I'm going to reach around for a purl stitch, under, over, twist, under thumb, over index finger, twist, under finger, over thumb, twist, give myself a little slack here, under thumb, over finger, twist. So I just made a knit stitch. And this is a cast on that you can't really cast on a few stitches, put it down, and then come back and finish casting them on. You kind of have to, commit to casting them all on in one sitting. So make sure, you are sitting comfortably, right? Don't have any interruptions or distractions. Okay, what do I have next? I have a purl, so I'm gonna go under the finger, over the thumb, twist, under the thumb, over the finger, twist. So you'll repeat these. Okay, I'm just gonna hold these stitches right here. So if you find that your stitches are twisting a little bit, like especially if you're using a cable and you find them twisting, when we go back and do our setup rows, they will all untwist and make sense. So if you're feeling nervous about, you know, where the bottom of your stitches are, it will all get worked out when we do the setup rows. Okay, so let me finish and I will see you back here in just a second. Okay, we're back. I have cast on all of my stitches, and if you are feeling like it's hard to count the number of stitches, just be very patient with yourself and make sure that the bottom of the stitches are all on the bottom. Does that make sense? Like you've kind of twisted them down so they look like this. Okay, so I've ended with a purl stitch, okay? So because this is not stable, I'm going to give it an extra twist with my yarn, and I'm going to turn the work. Make sure that you're working with your working yarn and not your tail. I'm actually going to pull my tail over here. Okay, so here's my working yarn. First we need to work these setup rows because you might notice that some of the stitches are not lying properly on the needles, right? They look kind of funky. So we need to actually twist those stitches so that they lie properly on your needles. Okay, so this first stitch is actually going to be a knit stitch because we're on the wrong side of the work. So we're gonna knit this stitch through the back loop. Okay, we're gonna bring our working yarn to the front, slip this stitch purlwise, bring our working yarn back to the back, knit through the back loop. Bring your working yarn back to the front, slip, wrap it back around, knit one through the back loop. Okay, now all of our stitches are lying properly. And then you can see this little kind of bump right here. That's the yarn, the working yarn that we slipped and brought around, okay? So that is totally normal. Slip one. You wanna make sure you wrap it around like this. Don't do this, right? Because that's gonna look like a brioche stitch. Okay, knit one through the back loop. And you'll just continue this way to the end. Until all stitches have been either worked, knit through the back loop, or slipped, okay? So I'm almost done with setup row 1, and now my stitches on my needles are actually looking all correct. They're all laying correctly on my needle, except for these ones. So knitting this stitch, so here I'm gonna be slipping the stitch with working yarn in front, and knitting this stitch through the back loop is actually what's twisting it back in the right direction. So I'm going to slip, knit one through the back loop, and then the last stitch I'm going to slip with working yarn in front. And now I'm going to turn my work, and there's all my stitches. We still need to work one more setup row, okay? So now we're working setup row 2, which is going to be worked similarly to setup row 1. So you can see this is a knit stitch. That's where we had our slip knot. This is a purl stitch, knit stitch, purl stitch, etc. So you can kind of see how this cast on works, and it almost looks like the stitches are just starting from nothing, like there's no real cast on edge. So I'm just going to knit the first stitch as you would normally, not through the back loop. And then the next stitch, slip 1 with yarn in front, bring your working yarn back, knit 1. Sorry, I got caught in the loop right there. And then you'll continue that down the row, bring your working yarn to the front, slip 1 purlwise, bring your working yarn to the back, knit 1. So you can kind of start to see the stitches growing